All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Executive Committee today. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We'll try to make this as quickly as possible today. We have some important topics to cover. I want to welcome everybody and thanks again for your attendance and time. Courtney, could you put our mission statement up on the screen for everyone to see, please? And our mission statement for the Developmental Disabilities Council, is as follows: to increase independent self-determination, productivity, integration, and inclusion for Louisianans with developmental disabilities by engaging in advocacy, capacity building, and systems change. And our protocols for today's meeting you see on the screen. The meetings are accessible via Zoom and live stream on YouTube. Council or committee members will participate via Zoom and shall be considered present when they display a live feed video of their face with their first and last name, have microphone muted unless called upon by the chairperson, electronically raise their hand to request the chair recognize them to speak. Once recognized to speak by the chair, their microphone shall be turned on. After speaking, the microphone shall be returned to mute. Guests may participate via Zoom or observe meetings live on YouTube. All public meetings shall be recorded and may be made available on the council's YouTube channel as determined appropriate by the chairperson. Public comments submitted during a meeting via any format below shall be considered. During a Zoom meeting, guests may electronically raise their hand to request to comment. Upon being recognized to speak by the chair, their microphone should be turned on. After speaking, the microphone shall be returned to mute. Post comments relevant to the item under consideration in the chat box. Post comments during the live stream of the meeting on the council's YouTube channel, and you'll see it linked there below in this document. Public comments of a person's character will not be heard. If the comment continues after being asked to stop by the chairperson, council staff may be instructed to end the meeting. The chairperson will notify the executive committee of this occurrence. Council chair will see guidance to determine if it is legally appropriate to redact or share the video of the meeting on the council social media. So those are the rules for today's meeting. Having said that, I know we have a quorum, so would everybody like to introduce themselves? I'm your chairperson, Randall Brown. I think we'll go around and I'll call on you and you just introduce yourself. Mike, are you present, sir?
I am present. I'm Michael Billings, parent on the executive committee of the council.
Thank you, sir. Mary, are you present? Mary Tarver, are you present with us today? Okay. She must not yet be with us. Stephen, are you present, sir?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen Wynn, and I am from the Jefferson Parish area, self-advocate, and I am the member at large.
Thank you, sir. And Madam Vice Chair, are you present? Dr. McKee?
Greetings. I'm Hyacinth McKee. I'm the Vice Chairperson of the DD Council. I serve on the Executive Board.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Okay, so that's everyone. Hopefully Mary will be able to join us soon at some point today. But we do have a quorum, so we will proceed. And Courtney, I'm going to turn the floor over to you at this point, and let you give us information that is relevant to the legislative agenda.
Hi there. Good afternoon. Again, I want to mirror what Randall had said. Thank everybody for being able to attend on such short notice. And I apologize if my internet happens to go in and out throughout the meeting. So if you happen to call on me and I can't respond immediately, I preemptively apologize for that. But just wanted to make all of you aware that there have been some developments regarding potential budget cuts for next year. LDH had sent an email to me and other LDH entities anticipating a $202 million shortfall that will be coming down the pike for 2022. So I reached out to both Julie Foster Hagen and Jen Katzman to find out how that could affect services for our individuals with developmental disabilities. And I actually received a response last night from Jen Katzman that indicated that the entirety of the $202 million budget shortfall was going to be absorbed by the medical vendor payments portion of LDH, and that they think that they can mitigate cuts to services through other funding that they're anticipating to receive for FMAP. So I don't know that that's a critical issue right now, but Jen Katzman also reiterated that it is still subject to change, that it's not definite, that they're not going to see cuts to services, that we still need to monitor the legislative session and the revenue estimating committee to make sure that there's not going to be any further cuts that are anticipated. Also, we were contacted by Ms. Kelly Monroe with ARC of Louisiana, Ms. Carolyn Meehan of Community Provider Association, and Ms. Jackie Blaney with Independent Living. And they had some thoughts about our direct support professional legislative advocacy agenda ask. And they also have some recommendations that I feel would be really beneficial for the executive committee to hear. So actually at this point, I'm going to let those ladies present to you what was presented to us, the staff, last week. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Who's leading the conversation among the ladies? So I can give them the floor. Kelly, are you
I can,
able to speak?
yeah, I can do that.
I know you saw I'm picking on you first, I guess, but thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. And thank you for scheduling this meeting at such short notice. We really do appreciate that. We wanted to kind of talk to you guys because we too heard about the $209 million shortfall. It's actually 900 and something, but 209 of it's going straight to medical vendor payments, which is basically all of our services. So it's our services and hospitals. And during COVID, I just can't see them cutting hospitals at all. So
Right.
it looks like it's going to come straight to disability services at this time. So, but in addition to that, we wanted to kind of talk about the $2 wage pass through to the DSWs. I know, we've had lots and lots of conversation about this. We've had a lot of discussion of whether or not we should set a floor, we should give the DSPs an increase. And we, and I know I've said this before, like we would love nothing more to do that. Right now, we have, we were able to get a little bit of money to kind of help us during COVID. But we're still working on a 2008 rate. If they give us the $2 to put the pass through for the DSPs, it still doesn't cover the cost of the increase to that individual. So I know that we decided we would say like 70% would go to the individual and 30% would go to the provider to cover some of those costs. But with some of the things that you guys may not be aware of is that, well, first, and I can only speak for the ARCs, but I know that many other provider agencies are the same, where because we had such a workforce crisis, we had already given them a pretty significant raise to kind of try to keep people during COVID. And I mean, not that we didn't want to, we wanted to, but especially during COVID, we needed to. It was a necessity. So we've already done that. But what happens is that every time you increase that, you also have to think about the managers and supervisors. Now we have to increase all of these other salaries with no additional dollars, no additional funding source. We know that some of the DSPs, I'm assuming, are getting paid minimum wage. I don't know where that is actually coming from. I know none of the ARCs are doing that. But I'm just concerned because as it is, the feds are trying to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Our rate reimbursement doesn't even cover $15 an hour. It's a broken system that I don't think we're prepared for. And we were just hoping that you guys would take that in consideration, and us knowing what you're trying to accomplish or what you want to accomplish, maybe we can all work together next year to accomplish that goal together and make sure that it's healthy on both sides. Because if it's not healthy on both sides, it's just not going to work. And I'll just, I know Jackie and Caroline both have, something that they can add to that.
Sure. Well, thank you for that perspective, Kelly. And if you're finished at this point, I'll move on to Carolyn and Jackie to get their perspective as well. Did you have more you need to add, Kelly?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so, Ms. Carolyn, you have the floor. And welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Randall. And hi to all of y'all. I know I've met some of you, but not all. I'm Caroline Meehan. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Provider Association. So we represent disability providers across the state. And I don't have much to add to what Kelly said. I mean, I think, just talking to the members of my association, a lot of them, again, I'll say across the board, every single provider wants to raise the wage for their DSPs. I mean, that just goes without saying. I think a lot of them are a bit worried about proposals like this because they experienced the last wage pass-through that the department did and then clawed back. And so then they were in the position of, having to make tough choices about how to pay their staff. And like Kelly said, with wage compression, it's not just DSPs, it's with supervisors on up. And again, we want to pay everybody more. It's just, it's difficult to do that when we are rate takers and not rate setters. The state determines what the rate is and we can't do much more about that. I think another big issue is just the diversity among providers, where they are in the state, the population that they serve, the people they employ. It's just sort of hard to do a one-size-fits-all pass-through in this way. So I'm just hearing sort of a lot of consternation from my members, especially during the pandemic when they're having some pretty significant staffing challenges. So, to echo, I don't know, this year, this is going to be a tough legislative session, and I know we're running towards it already, but I hope, next year we can work together and talk through how we can increase wages in a way that works for everybody. So, and thanks again for having us today. It's good to virtually meet all of you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your perspective. And if you have no more to add, I'm going to yield the floor to Jackie from Independent Living.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Jackie Blaney. I am the Executive Director of Independent Living, as well as the coordinator of the Louisiana Supported Living Network. And I appreciate, and our members appreciate the council's concern and interest in supporting our staff and supporting this industry to remain and become healthier and sustainable, and to ensure that the supports and services continue to improve. We know some of us were around with the previous pass through and know that there was some unfortunate unintended consequences with that particular effort. We want to make sure that we learn from that, and that some of those things that maybe need to be considered when we look at the very real and very important issue of improving the living wage of home and community-based staff. As Caroline mentioned, that we need to look at the issue from a holistic perspective. We need to have competent and consistent frontline staff, and as well as internal support staff. And so in order to have a healthy organization to support people, all of those things are necessary. So we look forward to working with you guys and to working as a group so that we can make our industry and continue to be helpful to people and sustainable for years to come. Not even, this shortfall that's coming this year is very, very scary. But we want to work together in the best interest of people, families, and those who provide the support. We know that there were some things that, previous efforts towards this maybe were not sufficiently included in the process of looking at it. Things like, I think was already mentioned, the variation in providers in terms of how many people are supported based on the rates that they receive. So there's a lot of variation in case mix. There's a lot of variation in expenses. There's going to be huge increases in insurance, including health insurance, liability insurance, those things. So there's lots of things that need to be looked at and worked on in order to make increase the wages for all staff a doable and successful thing across the state. So we look forward to working with y'all. We look forward to working as a team, hopefully to ensure that we have a good ask so that people can be supported consistently and competently ongoing. So thanks for allowing us to have this time with you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for asking for this time with us. And let me reiterate before we begin asking questions that we agree, the council agrees, we are all in this together. We certainly understand the importance of all of your agencies and how important your staff and your teams are to helping our community. And that's why we have this ask. And it's a passionate thing for our members to really want to see a wage increase for their direct service workers. And that's something that we had a robust discussion in our October meeting about this agenda item. And there's a lot of passion out there, and rightly so. DSWs do very important, critical work for our community. And I want to thank you all for the part you play in making that happen. Before I begin turning over to questions from the committee, I have one simple question to ask. And that is, if we make no change to our current legislative agenda ask for this item, will you oppose it or will you support it? And I'm asking that of all three of you independently.
Well,
To speak for your agency.
we
And
talked about,
go ahead, Kelly.
I'm sorry, Jackie, go ahead.
I was just going to say, based on what I've read of your proposal, we could not support it.
Okay, that's important for us to know. Okay, now Kelly, what about the ARC?
So when we met with the ARC, we would come out in opposition. Unfortunately, we would not be able to support it either. It would put a lot of our chapters in a huge financial bind. and we just would not be able to sustain that. We already are sustaining a terrible situation financially as it is. So unfortunately, we would have to come in opposition.
Thank you for your candor. Okay, Caroline, and I apologize. I think I called you Carolyn earlier, so I apologize. Caroline, what's your position?
That's okay, Randall. It happens all the time. I thank you. So the CPA, it's nuanced, I guess. We're never going to oppose a rate increase, but we would not openly support it. We would provide information to legislators about why it's important that we get rates up since we're at 2008 levels, but we don't feel that a wage pass-through is appropriate.
Okay, important information for us to know. All right, now let me ask one more question before we turn it over to questions from the committee. And that is, should we agree to delay this agenda item for next year? Do we have the commitment from all three of your agencies, entities today, that we will work together, all three of us, on a cohesive plan to raise rates next year?
Yeah, we would love
Yes.
to work with you to make sure that both, like, all sides are healthy. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes. And
Needs
that's
to be done.
that's our wish as well. But I want to get us on record before we even begin discussion. This is something important to our community, and the council's committed to it. And so for us to change it, we would have to have your commitment publicly and now that we're going to work together, all of us. I believe Jackie said holistic approach, a holistic approach to this for all of our entities and all of our communities, so we get something put out there that is effective and, will be long-term. We don't want something out there that's going to be temporary and pulled back if we can help it. Of course, with budgeting, we never know that, but I mean, we obviously want to come out together, and our voices are stronger together. There's no question about it. So having said that, I'll turn it over now to questions from the executive committee. So does anybody on the executive committee, y'all have any questions for the group? Any comments, any questions from the executive committee members? None?
Randall.
Yes.
Hey, it's Mary. I just wanted to say thank y'all to, give us some more information about this. I think we've struggled with it a few times. So I think it's good. And in my opinion, we want to all be on the same page together. And so I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments from the committee?
I think Stephen's raising his hand.
Stephen, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I concur with the messaging that we should all work together, and when we work together, we're stronger. So let's continue to work together and get these increases that these DSWs work so hard for and so deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments from the executive committee? Hearing none, do we have any questions or comments from the public?
Randall, Miss Kathy Dwyer has her hand raised.
Yes,
As
Ms.
well
Kathy,
as,
you have the floor.
And then Bambi will be after Ms. Dwyer.
Okay. Ms. Kathy, you have the floor, and then Bambi, after Kathy, you'll be next. Ms. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say I do agree we need to all work together for this. My daughter has been probably one of the first 100 to receive the waiver. And so I have pretty lengthy experience of services from DSWs. And I definitely feel for the providers, and I feel especially for the direct support workers, you know, at some of the pay levels they receive. I understand and appreciate providers such as the ARC that gave a significant raise during COVID, but that doesn't mean every provider has done that. And I also understand the considerations for managers and supervisors and so forth, but we're talking about, you know, the boots on the ground workers who make probably the least compared to the managers and the supervisors and so forth, who can't afford, you know, especially these days with the cost of living. The cost of living in New Orleans is just over $16 an hour. So I don't know how you expect the DSWs to be able to work and pay for all the things that are necessary to live. I've had experienced huge turnovers with staff for my daughter, which has presented a huge problem. And most of them have said it's the pay, especially when I found the really good ones. I mean, we can probably find people who are willing to flip burgers or whatever, you know, and no offense to them, you know, at a lesser rate, but actually they get paid more, you know. We need to start treating our workers with a little more respect and get them the wages they need. I feel for the providers. I understand the overhead costs, the administrative costs, having worked in grants and contracts for years, preparing budgets for projects and having to include fringe benefits and administrative costs and so forth. I understand all that, but that's what that 30% was supposed to be for, to kind of help with that. Now, if that 30% needs to be a little bit more, I would suggest consider increasing the 30% to 35 or something, but I find 30% pretty reasonable. I mean, back when I was managing budgets, the overall administrative costs, or what we would refer to as indirect costs for service programs, was in the low 20s%. So I felt like, you know, as mentioned, we've discussed this pretty lengthy and discussed all the details and the pros and cons and so forth. You've already admitted there's staffing challenges. Well, there's going to continue to be staffing challenges at the low rate of pay. And to have someone paid at 2008, to me, is frankly embarrassing at 2008 levels. And I know it's not providers' fault at all. Unfortunately, we do live in a poor state. But I don't see us we can't keep putting this off. The mission of the DD Council is to make sure families receive the services they need in order for their loved ones to live independent and integrated lives. They're not going to receive those services with low pay wages. And if we don't commit to doing this every year and somehow finding a way to agree on what needs to happen instead of postponing, it's just going to get bigger and bigger. The problem that is. I would suggest the provider organizations somehow look at their data and come up with what they would need to support a $2 pass-through increase for the DSWs. We're not looking to increase wages for administrative personnel, but that's going to come into the 30%. So I mean, I appreciate every one of y'all. I wish y'all could see me because I'm smiling right now. I really do appreciate every single one of y'all, but I haven't heard a good argument not to go for it when I think about how long our children go without staff and how we struggle. And I'm going to tell you, as I am in my senior years, it concerns me because it's going to get to the point that I can't keep filling in when the provider doesn't have staff, and that's what happens. So you're going to start having people my age needing somebody regular, dependent, and you're not going to get that at $7.25 an hour.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Kathy. We appreciate your perspective and your time today.
Can I say one
Bambi,
thing?
you have, yes, Kelly, you can
respond to Kathy. Thank you so
Yes.
much, Kathy. I agree. But the 2008 levels, those are what we are paid. We pay more than that, but that's what's reimbursed to us. And I agree, that's terrible for us to be working on a rate that, I mean, that old. So you can imagine all the costs that have gone up between 2008 to 2021 and having to deal with the same amount of money. But I know, like, and like I said, I can't speak up for everybody, but I know the average, when we did a survey, the average rate of pay was like between $9.50 and $10 an hour for DSPs, which is not wonderful, but it's not as terrible, I think, as what people think it is. I think some people may be looking at some old data.
Thank you, Kelly, for that perspective. Bambi, you have the floor. And do have to say that Miss Kathy did comment while you were speaking, Kelly, and she said she understands that. So
Okay.
Bambi, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. First off, I just want to say in regards to the provider associations that are on the meeting, in regards to them collaborating, they have always collaborated and worked and advocated for people with disabilities. That's who they are. I know these ladies in their organizations, and I appreciate them coming on the meeting. But secondly, like, I really feel like the issue is that people do not understand, the people who are receiving the services, I don't feel understand what providers have to deal with. I have been both. And so I know this. I have worked in numerous jobs across my career, special education teacher, working in the governor's office through a 100-year flood and a pandemic. I've also worked as a director of a provider agency. There is no job more challenging than having to be an administrator of a provider agency. These provider agencies are having to, some of the costs that they have to incur that I don't think that is understood. It's not like another business or contracts, grants that are received. It's not the same. Just a few years ago, they've had to incur the cost of health insurance. They've had to incur the cost with the changes in time and a half. None of those things were reimbursed. These are labor laws and health laws that they've had to pay for their employees. And so I just feel like people do not understand all that's involved. The other thing that's involved is their entity as providers of services is different than a hospital setting or a group home setting or some other type of setting, because they have to ensure the health and safety of all of their clients, and their clients are across large areas. And so it's not like they can just go down a hall and make sure everyone's getting the service. It's a lot of overhead that they aren't reimbursed for. So when they talk about supervisor pays or managers pay, that's the cost that is a very important cost, because they have to ensure the health and safety. So I say all that to say, we need to start advocating as if we believe the services that they provide are critical and valued and important. The same way we reimburse nursing homes or other health services, we need to say they need to be reimbursed in a professional manner so that they can pay professionals to work with our developmental disability population. So I think we should continue to advocate for that $2 an hour. I do not think that there's a feasible way to enforce. I said that at the last meeting, to be able to enforce that pay through, I don't even know what that looks like, to be able to do the management of ensuring that everybody got this wage pass through that's being proposed. But if we say we deserve, they should be paid more, then that's what we should advocate for. And then once we're paying them more, then we can have our expectations higher. But where we're at right now, they're not given enough to be able to do the job that we're expected to do. So my advice is to continue to advocate for the $2 an hour more, but just remove the requirements for pay at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Bambi. Are there any other questions or comments from the public?
You have a comment from the public, and Ms. Hyacinth McKee has her hand raised.
Okay, Madam Vice Chair, you have the floor first, and then we'll go back to the public comment.
I'll defer to the public and then I'll jump in. I'll let the
Okay.
public member
Okay.
chair and then I'll jump in. I'll let the public member.
Okay. All right. Well, so our public comment, Hannah, if it's in the chat box, could you read it for us, please?
Yes, it's from Miss Melinda Elliott. She said the DSPs in my area do not get paid that much. Many are making minimum wage in my area.
Thank you for that information, Melinda. And thank you, Bambi, for your information with us today.
And Miss Julie Foles has her hand raised as well, Randall.
Julie, you have the floor.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Yes, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Randall. So my name is Julie. I'm the LaCan leader for Region 3. My only suggestion is this is the third or fourth year that the LaCan leaders from our member meetings have come with this of wanting the DSP rate raised. What I was wondering is I want all of us to work together. I want the DD Council, I want the providers, and the public. Is there any way, like some type of committee or something, to where everybody can work together and we can get this done? Because if not, every year we're just going to keep coming back with it, and then it's just going to keep getting hit back.
We
So-
understand. And I'll say that I think that's a good idea. And that's part of why I said at the very outset of this is I want to get our commitment from while everyone's present today and on record. I wanted to get our commitment, and I applaud everyone for the work we've done up to this point. I think everyone here is committed to the community and wants to see these changes happen for our community. I don't think there's a person here, either on the council or any of us, who don't want to see this become a reality. And so I want to make that clear. But at the outset, that's why I asked the question of the entities present today, if they would be willing to work together. And I think that we'll do so in whatever format that takes. I think that we all are willing to do it.
Okay. And that was my only thing, was just all of us getting together, since everybody wants to see this happen.
Absolutely.
We all want to see it happen in a feasible way.
Yes.
So I think I think we need to come up with some type of format where everybody just has a seat at the table and we all talk about it and try to figure out a way to make this happen. And that's all I have.
Thank you. And thank you for that suggestion, Julie. Any other questions or comments from the public?
You have a few comments in the chat box, I believe, regarding that.
Okay, could you read
I'm
those
gonna
off,
jump
please?
in. No, Randall, may I jump
Go
in?
ahead. Go ahead, Madam Vice
Yeah,
Chair.
and then,
You have
because
you
I was
have the
just
floor.
deferring to let that one person speak, and then I wanted to
All right, that's
jump
fine.
in
You
and
have the
just
floor.
thank
You
you.
have the floor. Go ahead.
Greetings and thank you to all of the providers that are here on the call today. I'm noticing that Julie Foster Hagan is also on the call. Thank you, Julie, for joining us today as well. Sometimes you attend different meetings throughout the year and then you have your mind made up. And then when you listen to the comments from the public and then from the comments of the people that the policies actually affect, it then begins to work on whether or not you should make a decision based on your conscience. And I'm saying that to say that I look on the Zoom call and I see everyone present at the table except a direct support professional. And that's concerning to me. I believe that we should, as Julie Foles mentioned, have everyone at the table. The last couple of conversations and dialogue we've had, we have not had a direct service professional present to speak their perspective. Now, I can, as a historian, say that I acted in the role of a direct support professional as well as a family member who, as with Ms. Kathy Dwyer said, had to step in, throughout the day to fill in when a DSP was unavailable, or when the provider agency could not find one and had to go in and provide that support to a family member. And so I empathize with Miss Kathy Dwyer on that perspective. So she does bring a side to the conversation that's missing from today. And so I would like to encourage us to have a direct support professional and professionals to be part of this conversation so that they can speak to their experience. And to speak to Bambi's note, and I appreciate her comment and her passion in that, it reminds me so much of the plight of the social worker, right? Social work has always been the type of profession that has for many years been minimized as to doing everything other than what the value is brought to lives. And it takes crises such as a global crisis of what we just went through in 2020 to all of a sudden value what the social worker brings. And so again, I share with in the position of Bambi, if not now, then when? If not, so we constantly keep delaying this. And so again, we need to really, if we are going to either support this or not support this, we really need to come to the table and really put together some clear-cut objectives, including everybody, on how we're going to attack this. This conversation, the DD Council Executive Committee has heard this about the wage increases for the past 3 council meetings. And so now we're at an EC meeting where we are deciding whether or not we are going to support what we've already put out in our legislative agenda. So again, I just want to encourage us to include the direct support professionals in this conversation to get their perspective before we make a final decision. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Any other comments from the council before I proceed to public comment? Any council member wish to make a comment at this time? Okay, Hannah, do we have those public comments ready to read?
Yes, sir. Ashley McReynolds said ad hoc committee is a great idea, Julie. Miss Bambi Polozola said very good suggestion, Julie. And Miss Kathy Dwyer said, I would hope the providers would support an increase, even if it's not exactly as they would like it, because they would still benefit with 30% of the increase.
Okay, thank you all for those comments. Are there any others? Any other public comment? Okay, do our guests today from the agencies, do y'all have anything else to add? Having heard those comments from the public?
I just like to, this is Jackie. I'd like to comment on a couple of things, and this is really good. This is a really good conversation, beginning of a conversation that I think we need to, as people have said before, unfortunately, we're just starting it now. It would be awesome if we could have had these kinds of conversations prior to your having a complete, legislative agenda. So I look forward to more of these kinds of fruitful conversations. The LDH cost reports would be one way to access some information having to do with the general average rates across the state. Also, the shout out to social workers. Thank you for that. As a social worker for the past 40 years, you're right, we're often overlooked. But and the notion of including direct support professionals in the conversation, I think that's a great idea also. But because we have some history with unintended consequences with the previous pass-through, I feel very strongly that a pass-through is not the appropriate method. And as a matter of fact, it could do more harm than good. And that's why we would oppose it. We need to have information as it relates to the differences that exist regionally, the differences that exist based on size, the differences that exist. I've been around about 35 years. The differences that exist between providers who have been around as long as I have and providers who've been around 10 years. So there's a lot of information that needs to be considered that obviously families don't know. You're not in that part of the world to know, but it's important to fold that kind of information into a collaborative, if we're going to be collaborative, if a partnership to work on this issue.
Absolutely. Let me say, you know, it's wonderful to hear that everyone's on board and we're looking at ways to collaborate. I think that's how good policy happens. I know it's how good policy happens, and you know, it's a wonderful thing for us to be able to come together today and get commitments to begin the hard conversations to hopefully get something that we can all agree to and all get behind, fully support. Because one of the things that concerns me deeply is that the way we have it on our legislative agenda, you know, you guys can't or won't support. And I understand your positions, but that's just where we are right now in terms of our legislative agenda. You know, you'll have to be in opposition. That I think is something that is regrettable, and we'll take our you know responsibility there. But I certainly, you hear the passion of our community and the need, and you're part of it every day. And so, and we're sensitive to it because obviously this is why we're here. So you're why we're here. You're all why we're here. So, you know, we are sensitive to it, and we understand as much as we can the need and how much we have to be out there and advocating for what is needed. But I think it's very important and much more effective if and when we do it together, as opposed to when we're doing it separately. I mean, you have to stand by conviction, even if you have to do it alone, and that's understandable. But I think we're stronger together. And I certainly am encouraged that we want to come together and look at ways to make the policy stronger and better for all of us. And we're committed to doing that. But in terms of this legislative agenda item, what the executive committee now has to take into account is, do we modify our ask as Bambi proposed, or do we table the ask with the understanding and commitment we've received today from all three partners to spend this next year or better part of it actually coming up with real solutions to the problem we can all three agree with and get behind at the next legislative session, with surely at that point all the data we would need to get behind the push together and be in agreement for it and all working together in unison towards it? Or do we proceed as the council has already directed us to do? So that is the question truly before the executive committee today, is given what we've heard, given all we've heard and seen, how do we proceed at this point? And that's a question directly to my council, my executive committee.
Dr. McKee and Michael Billings both have their hands raised.
Okay, Dr. McKee, since you spoke before, I'll let Mike go first, and then
yes.
and then you'll have the next floor next. Okay, Mike, you have the floor, sir.
Okay, thank you. Listen to all sides here, and I keep, one voice keeps popping in my head, and that's April Dunn. And we got to march forward. You know, I think we go to the table this year and let them know if we don't do it this year, we're coming back next year. That's just my thoughts.
Okay. And Madam Vice Chair, you have the floor.
Like I said earlier, sometimes when you hear things previously, from a personal standpoint, you say to yourself, I think I already have my mind made up. But when you start hearing different perspectives and recognizing that we are here to serve the public's interest, then it becomes a situation where you know you need to support and vote your conscience. And at our last DD Council meeting, although we may not always agree on issues personally, the public resoundingly requested that we put forth their interest first. And so my position as it stands right here is the position of the public. And the public position that was directed by the DD Council was to move forward with the request. And so although it may not be something that we all may agree with personally, the public who we serve requested that we move forward with the legislative agenda. So maybe this conversation is a little bit too late. From what I'm understanding from the public, similar conversations have taken place for the past 4 years. And so my concern is, do we have another conversation and delay it another 2 years? So where we are right now is the public is asking us to move forward. And again, thank you, Mike. You're hearing April's voice. Sometimes I hear a voice too when we finish. But again, our position that the DD Council has charged us to do is to move forward. That is the will of the public from the last DD Council meeting.
Well, thank you. And obviously, you know, that's something that we wanted to make sure everyone was heard. You know, we thank everybody for coming out today and giving us your perspective, given the information. We did not know the reason we're having today's meeting about it again is we did not have the number, the 200, what is it, 209 million cut. We did not have that number in October. So the fact that we now have a number and made it easier to discuss, and we wanted to get on the record as far as everyone's position. And so that's why today's meeting. And so, and we are aware that this is constantly an issue of deep concern, and you know, and so that's why today's meeting was important. And let me say that conversation is a great thing, never a bad thing. In terms of this legislative agenda item, you know, we have to agree this is about to be set. We're about to roll out for this legislative session what is being said and done for the legislative session. So in terms of the future, you know, as we roll forward, if the partners who came forth today still want to work with us for, you know, the future, we're open. We're open to that. We're open to however that begins to look as far as an ad hoc committee or anything that we may choose to do to collaborate. But, you know, the consensus seems to be to move forward as we've written it. Let me ask the question, though, about collaborative cost. Do we anticipate the cost of that? Courtney, do you have anything to add?
I'm not sure what you're referring to about cost for our ask.
Yes.
If we make any changes today, then it might affect the cost for our ask.
Okay.
But if there's no changes made today, then it will not affect the cost in our ask. But also, just to bring up another, I guess I should have had another bullet point, but the other provider agencies and the ladies attending today also have an advocacy agenda, and they have no cost items on their agenda. And I don't know if you guys would be willing to entertain collaborating with those agenda items as well.
To any of our agencies who are attending today, would you like to address Courtney's point?
Sure. Do you just want us to just outline what the agenda is, Courtney?
I think
For
Courtney has
discussion.
that she can share.
All right, so there you go. So this is for everyone to see. So Kelly, do y'all have anything to add to Courtney's point or request?
Caroline, do you want to go through it, or do you want me to, however you want to do it?
Yeah, no, I can, you know, just generally, I mean, what we're asking for, and you can see on the one pager, we're just asking legislators to prioritize funding for disability services. So that would be no cuts to these services in the state budget. And then best case scenario, if we get another federal COVID package, that the legislature directs the department to prioritize those funds for our services. You know, I think what we've seen with the first couple of federal COVID packages is that some of that money was siphoned off into other areas, and we just want to be sure that that we get our fair share. The other thing we're pushing for is that second kind of bucket is permanently continuing some of the COVID-19 program flexibilities that providers and families have found really helpful. And this includes incorporating, you know, in a person-centered way for what individuals with disabilities and their families want, allowing for some virtual visitation, for some electronic signatures, just to cut down on the people in and out of the home, you know, as people want. Allowing DSPs to exceed their 16-hour per day service limitation, and allowing for legally responsible relatives to work as DSPs. So these are things that were put in place for the public health emergency that we've that our members and the people they serve have found helpful. So we're just looking for ways to keep those in place. So yeah, we of course, you know, would welcome the support of the council and families where there's alignment.
Okay, thank you. Kelly, do you have anything to add?
No, just that when we were looking at the Appendix K exceptions and flexibilities, we kind of reached out to families, we reached out to providers, we reached out to support coordinators, and then also the families who are being served by the providers, which collectively together is like a little over 30,000 families that we support. So we reached out to all of these groups, and these were the top 3 that they felt were most helpful to them. So none of them cost any money. We've had this on for about 8 months, I guess, maybe a little less. And it's proven that, you know, we didn't have extra incident reports because of it, and no one was hurt because of it. And it was very helpful to everybody. So we would love for you guys to support this. If you do, and you want to support quietly, we understand. But if you want to fully support, we can also like add you on here as a collaborator on our one pager, but totally up to you guys.
Okay, thank you for that. And Jackie, I have to ask you, do you have any thing to add in terms of this discussion for the independent living?
No, we also surveyed our members, and the family supported, and it was very interesting that the suggestions were mirror image to the other associations.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for those suggestions. Do we have any comments from the public?
Sir, you have Miss Karonda Corley with her hand raised, and you have a few comments in the chat box.
Ms. Karonda, you have the floor, and then we'll get to the chat box. Hannah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and Executive Committee. It really and truly pains me today to actually see that we're actually having this meeting when we had an outcry and an outpour from the community at large. we have more numbers of individuals with disabilities that will be impacted by direct support workers than we are actually reflecting in the data that you provided today. I did not hear that data reflect how many will be impacted that are using waivers to have their actual direct support worker, whether it is Children's Choice Now waiver or the row waiver. That information wasn't disseminated. I heard them mention that they actually did surveys, but we do know that from previous surveys that we have missed a large group of population of our people in this disabilities community. So I definitely would like to know, what groups did you survey? Because I didn't even hear about the survey. And I make it my business to know about everything that y'all do. So if I didn't know about this survey, plenty of other people didn't either. I mean, after all, we just had a focus group with LDOE and y'all only reached 101 people. Just saying. So we know the survey and the outreach to the unserved and underserved is very much lacking. But we are obligated as a DD council, federally obligated to do systems change. And too many times y'all continue to drop the ball as it relates to doing systems change. Is there a conflict of interest that nobody actually know about that we need to know? Because who's hurting is the people in which each and every last one of you are governmentally appointed to represent. We need that representation. And right now is not the time for us to backpedal when our community has constantly been forgotten about in the midst of a global pandemic. We need our direct support workers. Every single person in this community that has one, they need them. And right now they can't keep them because the people are not getting paid livable wages. Each and every last one of you work a job and get paid livable wages. We need that same for them. That's why it took more than 2 hours on that debate in regards to putting forth that legislation. Also, let's be mindful that LaCan has already been meeting with some of the legislators, and they have the roundtables coming up.
We are mindful, and I hate to cut you off, Karanda, and your points are excellently made. But the DD Council does support this item, and we are continuing to, as you can see by today's conversation. So I have no motions on my floor to entertain any changes to what we talked about at the October meeting, and so there are none. So we will be proceeding, but we had to have today's meeting to get everyone collaborating and get everyone's perspective, given the numbers we now have for cost and what is expected to be having to be absorbed. So that's mainly why we're talking today. There is no move or no effort by this council to change that legislative agenda, which you were part of in discussions in October. In January and October. We've been discussing this our last 2 quarterly meetings. And so this is, late in our discussion, but it was also imperative that we get all of these opinions and all of these perspectives on the record. And so that's why today was important and necessary. And thank you for your perspective.
With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, I greatly appreciate you. And the only ask that I have today is that if we change anything, that we increase the ask amount. Increase it. Don't decrease it since we got the numbers. Let's increase the amount. But and these other people and the other organizations can come to the table, absolutely. But we increase the ask amount. That's my ask.
Thank you.
I thank you kindly.
Thank you. Okay, now next, who do we have next, Hannah?
We have some chats in the chat box.
Could you please read those for us?
Yes, some are from a little while ago, but I'll read them anyways.
Yes, please.
Miss Kathy Dwyer said, "How would a pass-through do more harm than good?" Miss Melinda Elliott said, "We have been having a conversation about the amount DSWs make for the past 4 years. If we don't work on it now, we are putting it off another year." Miss Kathy Dwyer said, I completely agree, Melinda. We can't delay it any further. Miss Susan Reen said, has the revenue estimating committee met yet, and is the number final for the cuts? Question mark. Ms. Karanda Corley said, currently the legislators have forgotten this community exists. They will not remember us unless we force them. Let's not put this issue off. And she also asked, what is the impact for individuals under self-direction via waivers?
Thank you. Thank you all for your points. Are there any other comments from the committee or questions? Okay. No comments from the committee?
Stephen has his hand raised.
Stephen, you have the floor, sir.
I just wanted to ask if those couple of questions could be answered while we're on.
That was going to be my next thing, so thank you, sir. So let's take the revenue estimating committee. Have they officially met and produced the number?
Yes, but that can change.
Thank you. Bambi, would you like to speak? I can give you the floor.
Sure. I was going to say offline, but some of the things that I just know from my experience with the pass-through, oftentimes, I just give an example, a situation. You may have a client, let's say, that has like 50 hours of service, and they have a great worker who likes to work those 50 hours. And they want consistency, and the family feels comfortable and safe with having that worker. You set a floor of $9.25 an hour. You may be, oftentimes providers or businesses have to figure out their overall cost. And so they may gauge that hourly rate to be able to include that time and a half. They have to pay for that extra 10 hours. So if you set a floor of $9.25 an hour, and then you have to pay the whatever it comes out to almost $14 for those other 10 hours, it may cause the provider to have to make the decision that we can't pay time and a half anymore. So you have to get another person into your home. And so that's the type of business decision they have to make. So that's just one example. There are many more, but I don't want to take up any more of your time.
Okay. Let me ask this question of the three agencies who requested to meet with us today. Is there any way that we could modify our ask that you could support it this year? Hearing all that you've heard today, seeing all you saw, is there any way we could modify today that ask for the DSW or the DSPs that if we modified it, you could support it?
I think allowing each provider to decide how the money's dispersed would be fair. The expenses that people in New Orleans have are not the same as the people at the Ark of St. Mary. They're very different. Insurance is more expensive. Groceries are more expensive. I mean, the costs are just so different to run a business in both areas. I think that setting an expectation that everybody get a certain amount of money or $2 raise is just very difficult and will be very difficult for the providers. We already lost one chapter of the ARC during COVID, and we got 2 more on the way. And this will just shut the doors of those 2. And it's just not something that we can support. And we serve right under 10,000 families. Those families are relying on us. And so I hate to say we can't support that. But if it was to where maybe the funds were not completely directed, then I think that, maybe we could talk to the ARCs and see, but directing the funds to a particular amount is just not gonna, it's not gonna work.
Understood. Thank you.
And
so
I would just
Yes.
add to that, if I could,
Yes, Jackie, you have the
support
floor.
that. I'm thinking back to the last time there was this kind of effort passed through, and our associations for Living Network includes mainly small minority agencies that many of them in rural areas who are operating and on a shoestring because they're committed to the people, because they're committed to supporting the people in the best possible way. So the motivation, the mission, the vision of these organizations is to support the people in the best quality way. And they don't have the money to often to pay the insurance and the various expenses that are coming now. And we have many of our agencies support some people with developmental disabilities, and then they might have a majority of participants who receive services through Office of Aging. So that mix has to be, it might be the same staff person sometimes supporting across departments like that. So that has to be in the consideration. So one of the things that I'm hearing is, yes, this is important. I mean, the agencies know better than anybody else of how the difficulty in recruiting and retaining, trust me, particularly as a small agency when you don't have money to put into that kind of an effort. But we need to understand and recognize that there's a lot of variation in terms of who's supporting what, the rates that go along with that person. And everybody's important, whether the state sees fit to pay, $16 an hour or 12, everybody's important. So the agencies work very hard to provide quality support to everybody. But we saw agencies going out of business because they couldn't afford to pay those insurances, the $16,000-$17,000 of health insurance that goes up every year. Those are costs, the expenses such as nursing that's unfunded and various other unfunded mandates. These are things that need to be included in any discussion. I'm sorry that you've had discussions that perhaps did not include accurate information around these things. But in order for this to be supported by our members, we need to look at the big picture, the whole picture, which includes expenses that may not be known to the folks who put this together.
So do you have any suggestions as to how we might be able to change our language or wording so that we could garner your support today on this item as we currently have it?
I think the biggest problem with this is the methodology of a pass through, because there's too much variation in what I can do as a provider here and my agency versus what some agencies who have a different kind of organizational case mix than from what I have. So it's unfair, in my opinion, it's unfair to have a general pass through without considering all the variations among providers and how to do the best job. I mean, you can get something done, but is it the best way? And I don't believe this is the best way. So why not try and have something that's gonna address this problem in the best way? We know recruitment and retention of staff is a problem. I've worked as a direct support professional.
Understandable.
So we know
Okay,
it's a
well,
problem. We don't have to be
thank you for your
convinced of it.
input. And so now we're pressed for time. So I have to ask, Caroline, do you have anything to add to my question to you? Is there anything we could do to change our language or our wording in the current ask that would give you cause to support us?
I mean, I think just based on my conversations with my members, it would have to be just a straight $2 an hour rate increase. I don't removing the language about the 70% pass through, just based on providers' experiences from the last one. And I'm getting the sense that's not the direction the council wants to go because of your obligations to the public and your members. Going forward, I'd say, what we would love to see and work on is really systemic reform for the system, having a meaningful rate methodology.
We agree.
That, so that's, I think that's the direction we all
Let
want to go.
me say, we agree. And so that will be something that I hope that we can continue to agree to work toward doing, not just in this legislative session, which is obviously already upon us, but in the future. I think today was a very productive conversation. I welcome y'all's input, all of you, and we need to look at ways to collaborate early and often so that hopefully we're not in a position where another legislative session goes by and we're not in agreement on an item this important. But thank you all for your perspective. It was important to hear. And having said all that and heard from everyone, do I have anything that my council has to add? My committee members, is there anything y'all want to add or talk about? So everyone's good with leaving our agenda item as is written. Okay. Thank you all for your input today. It is important. And again, we hope to be able to collaborate in the future. And I believe that will be the end of this issue on today's discussion. And we have a matter with OCDD that needs discussion. And so Miss Julie Foster Hagan, you have the floor.
Hi, everybody. I'm feeling a little under the weather, so excuse me if my comments seem a little foggy. So just opportunity to share a thought that I had during the last DD Council and an offer from OCDD. It seems like sometimes there was a couple times during the last few council meetings where we might have tried to dive into an issue, but didn't really have time to fully explore it or fully explain the background related to the issue. And there's a whole lot in our system that is just really confusing and difficult to navigate. I think you guys all know that. And so one of the things that I was thinking in an effort to try to be transparent and give people the information that they need, I reached out to Courtney and to Randall and made the offer that if there are things that come up during council, or if there are things that the executive committee is aware of where we think it might be helpful for OCDD to do sort of a presentation to try to help help provide information on the system or provide information on the process or how things work, that we would be happy to do that. And I think some examples that would come to mind during our last meeting, there was some discussion about eligibility, and there were some questions about eligibility. And that's very, very complicated and would be very difficult to answer within sort of that 3-minute question and answer period time. It's really something that's more like a 2-hour conversation on all things, what the definition of developmental disability is, how we enact our processes and policies for eligibility, the things that are considered, where DSM-5 plays a part and where it does not, which it's not directly related to our eligibility. And so there's just a lot of factors there. And it occurred to me that it might be good to have an opportunity to do a presentation where we would offer to anybody on the council or any members of the public who would want to attend to be able to listen in on that topic or any topic that you guys feel like it would be good for us to share with you what our processes are, and then have an opportunity for like an open forum with questions and answers. And again, my reason behind this is really just to be transparent, because during the council meetings, sometimes I feel like it's coming across that we're taken as not trying to be transparent. And it's never that I'm not trying to do that. It's just sometimes really hard to describe processes in a 3 to 5 minute window of time in a way that everybody can understand it. And so really that was just my outreach and my offer. Eligibility was just one example. You know, we've had some questions about the budget process itself and the Now Fund. That might be an opportunity for a presentation so that we can better understand, you know, that's a 2 hour conversation with questions and answers for an hour. So I just, you know, again, just putting it out there to the executive committee that if that was something you guys wanted to pursue, it occurred to me that it might be something that would help the council members and as well as the public better understand the processes. And if you guys were interested in doing that and you tell us what topic, I'm happy to pull in my subject matter experts on those topics and make sure that we are, you know, providing as much information as we can about our processes.
Thank you. I preemptively agreed and accepted your offer, and I thank you very much for making it, Julie, because I happen to concur that I think something like this would be very beneficial to not only the council members, but to the community at large on questions that are vitally important with regard to your services. And so this is mainly just informational. I wanted to let the executive committee know the offer was made and what it entailed. And I see no reason why we can't collaborate together and do something of this nature. And I think it will do nothing but be helpful for you and for us. And so, having said that, I'll yield the floor to questions from the executive committee.
Dr. McKee has her hand raised.
Yes, Dr. McKee, you have the floor.
I'll be really brief because I know we're short on time.
Yes.
So are you proposing that maybe a presentation of some sort would be given during the DD council meeting on a particular topic? Is that what I'm understanding that the idea is?
Actually, I was thinking outside of the DD council meeting because I didn't want to, use the whole time for the DD.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's why I was trying to get clarification. Yeah, I think it would probably be better outside of I was trying to understand what the request was. And so, yeah, outside of the DD council is I think is the best venue, not doing the DD.
No, that's what we wanted was outside. I didn't make that clear and I apologize.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the executive committee? Mary.
Yeah, I know that there has been a couple of times, like you said, in the last couple of meetings where people have asked questions and, like you said, you have lots of information to share. Is there anything that you kind of feel that you would want to start with so that we would kind of have a plan? Like, if you offer it, that's great, but if we don't ever plan anything, that's probably not going to happen. So I just wonder if there's something that we need to put, you don't have to decide today, but if there's something, that we know that we need to do, maybe it's good to get that on the calendar and know that that's going to happen.
Okay, I'm happy to send my thoughts or suggestions, but I'm also happy to do presentations on whatever the will of the council is that they feel like might be helpful for folks as well.
Okay. Well, we definitely want to do this. We definitely are going to collaborate. So whether or not we have actual suggestions today, I think is great. But if we don't, then we certainly, the door is open, the communication is there, and I thank Julie and her team, and we will definitely be doing that. We'll definitely collaborate. And figure out some things that are important and get those things scheduled and started as soon as we can. So, but if there's any suggestions or feedback from anyone, now's the time.
I believe Bambi has her hand raised.
Yes, Bambi, you have the floor.
Yeah, first off, I think that's a great idea. But one of the issues is while we get into these, I think the time constraints is that we have been having an issue for several months, maybe over a year, of our council members participating in attending the meetings in which they are members. We repeatedly have to wait to establish a quorum for our meetings. I hope the executive committee addresses that, because if Julie provides this information, but if our council members aren't attending, then it's not going to be beneficial for us to make progress during our meeting. We had someone from National come down, a technical assistance, and do training, and only half of our council attended. That was last year, might have been before COVID, but like this has been an ongoing thing.
It was before COVID, yes.
And I mean, so if our council needs to make a commitment to, it's an honor to serve on this council, which I believe has changed the life of my family. And so I hope that the council members take that into, you know, just to be a present. And also if there could possibly be some leadership, you know, maybe there's something that could be done, because people are dealing with a lot right now. So we need to figure out what's going on with the council and why we're having this issue. So I just want to encourage the executive committee to address that. So thank you.
Right. We are, that's noted, Bambi, and thank you. And we are working on it. It has been an ongoing issue for, I'd say, at least 2 years. And the issues with COVID and remote connections and Zoom have not made it any easier. It's something I'm painfully aware of as the person who is charged with having to try to ensure we have quorums to conduct business, and that's getting increasingly harder to make things like even today happen. So it is something I'm working on and we're sensitive to. And I just encourage everyone, and this goes for executive committee as well, please, every chance you get, encourage our members to be active, engaged, and involved. One, we all said we'd do it. Two, we have to have the input to be able to function. So this is critical to our work. So, but thank you, Bambi, very much for bringing that to the attention of the public. Okay, are there any other questions or comments?
Miss Melinda Elliott asked if these presentations can be open to the public.
Thank you, Melinda.
And Miss Karanda Corley says she strongly agrees with Miss Polazola. Thank you for those statements. And Miss Melinda Elliott said, yes, it's disappointing when there isn't a quorum.
Understood. Thank you. And Julie, to Melinda's question about making these public, do you have in mind how we could do that already?
Yeah, I don't have any concern with making them public. Some of the things we've done recently is like recorded a webinar and then put it on our website, so that, you know, if we have trouble getting like a Zoom account for over 300 people. So sometimes we Zoom, but we can do like a 300 person limit with a registration, and then we can record it and put it on our website. So if there were people who, you know, weren't able to get in, then they'd be able to do that. We can do those things to be able to make sure available to folks.
Right. That sounds like a good solution.
Hey, Randall, if I may.
Yes.
Sorry, just something to think about when doing the webinars, just for sake of time. If there's going to be that many people, maybe if the topic could be published ahead of time and allow people to submit questions, and then be able to address those during the actual webinar. Because I think something that large, it might be difficult to take questions at the time of.
Very good point, sir.
I know OCDD has done that in the past, where they ask people to send in questions, and that's probably something to keep doing.
Okay, thank you. Very good point, sir. And like I said, this is an ongoing process. We'll continue to collaborate, the council and Julie and her team, on this, and we'll do everything we can to get this in a way that is open to everyone who wants the data and information. And of course, who wants to participate. Okay, is there any other questions or comments?
Hey, this is Courtney again. So I just need,
Yes,
for
Courtney.
documentation purposes, I need to have that there was a unanimous consensus for the council staff to help facilitate these efforts with OCDD.
Okay, so we'll ask, does anyone, and this is directly a question for the executive committee, does anyone object to the council staff being directed to coordinate with OCDD on the effort to come up with topics and present information for informational purposes for the community we serve? Does anybody object to that? Are there any objections? Yes, Courtney. Okay. Does anyone abstain? I have to ask if anyone abstains. Hearing no abstention, it has unanimously passed that the staff of the council will hereby be directed to work with OCDD to develop topics for public discussion and for those topics to be recorded and posted to our website and social media where appropriate. Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? First from the committee. Any other questions or comments from the public today? Hearing none. Yes, Hannah, yes.
Oh, I was just letting you know there were not any.
Okay, thank you, Hannah, and thank you for your work today and always. All right, I want to thank all the staff for all the work you do. I know you're doing a lot, and we're all working hard through very difficult conditions, and so I thank you all. I don't do that enough publicly, so I want to take this moment to thank y'all. And I want to thank the executive committee for taking the time out of your day to do this important work. And I also want to thank all of our guests today. And I look forward to collaborating anywhere and everywhere we can with the agreement with the agencies that were present today. We're all in this boat together, and we know and understand it. And so thank y'all very much for your addressing concerns, expressing yourselves, and being willing to be part of a collaborative effort. We accept that invitation very much and look forward to doing so in the future. All right, hearing no objections, we will unanimously agree to adjourn today's meeting if I hear no objection. No objections heard. We are hereby adjourned, ladies and gentlemen.